Hello, I'm Raymond Grace, President and founder of the Raymond Grace Foundation. And I'd like to talk with you a while today from our location here in the mountains of southwestern Virginia. I'd like to talk to you about your belief system and how, if it does not serve you well, that you might be able to change it. Now, let's start out with the first principle of all of the work that I do. It actually is based upon about three simple principles. Number one, all things, literally everything, is composed of energy. And the intelligent human mind has the ability to change energy. Principle number two, energy is impressed upon matter. What this means practically is that you are affected and have been affected by everywhere you've been, people you have associated with, and events in your life. And principle number three, I borrowed from a fellow named Einstein that says, energy follows thought. So keep those simple things in mind as we visit here today and see how this might apply to your life, because I think it applies to everybody's life. Now, we are the product of our heritage, culture, religion of our ancestors, but to a great extent here, we are a product of our environment. About a year ago, I started thinking about how much do I believe because I really believe it and have thought about it and it makes sense. And how much do I believe because the culture in which I have lived all my life believes it? What I found was I was believing a lot of other people's stuff that really wasn't doing me any good. So you might want to consider that too. And consider how much of what you believe is really yours. And the second question is, does it serve you well? And if it doesn't, then you can start to change it, because it's doubtful anyone else is going to change it for you. They haven't yet. So it looks like it's up to you to change it yourself. Well, I would like to share a few stories with you and give you some ideas about why you may have the belief you have and what you could start to do to change it. Now, I would like to briefly discuss the 4 phases of brain frequency. And a brain frequency is simply the number of electrical impulses or charges of electricity that your brain emits per second, and has been doing so since before you were born and will do so all your life. Back before you were born and up until about the time you were 3 years old, your brain was emitting 3 or fewer charges of electricity per second. This is known as a delta brain frequency. Whenever you were around 3 years old, your brain frequency started speeding up, and it into a range called the theta brain frequency. And it remained there until around the age you were 7. And around the age of 7, we all got a new set of teeth. But what we were doing mentally was we were moving into a higher brain frequency, where we remained for around 7 years. At around the age of 14, or maybe even a bit younger, her body started developing, and her brain frequency speeded up again into what is known as a beta brain frequency. Now, this is simply the process of human evolution of brain frequency. I think it happens to all of us. Now, children think with both sides of their brain, the right and the left side of the brain. This is very simplified, but the left side of the brain is the logical side, and the right side is the creative side. And when we were kids, we used both sides, which is why we had such a good imagination. Now, Einstein is reported to have said, imagination is more important than knowledge. But it's doubtful, if you're an adult watching this, that you have the ability of imagination that you had when you were, say, 10 years old. That's because as you started moving into the beta brain frequency, you started losing the ability to use both right and left brain frequencies or brain hemispheres simultaneously. So in doing that, we lost a lot of our ability for visualization and imagination. Now let me clarify these two words. All visualization is remembering what something looks like that you have seen. What imagination is creating a mental picture of something that you have not seen. Now if you at this time want to test this, you could close your eyes and remember what I look like. I'm wearing a black Stetson hat, a black shirt, black jeans, and a gun belt. And that, when you remember that, that would be visualization. Why? Because you've already seen this. You've been sitting there watching it. However, if you close your eyes and you imagine me in a three-piece suit, I can assure you that that is imagination because I don't own one, and you would be making all this up in your mind. So that's the difference between the two. However, both of them are very important because without imagination, nothing new could be created. So imagination is extremely important, as Einstein quoted. So now that we know that, let's talk about our belief system. Why do you believe what you did? Did you sit down and one day and think about what you decided you wanted to believe in life? Or did you believe what you were taught in school, taught in church, what your parents taught you, what folks you associated with taught and believed? See, we are affected by our environment, the people we're around, and that's just a normal thing that happens. The problem is it's not always positive. For example, if you were taught as a kid, maybe growing up under unfortunate financial circumstances, that life was going to be a struggle, it probably has been, unless you were smart enough to change that belief system in yourself and overcome it. If you were taught that you were sick or that you were around a lot of people that complained about illness and you were always told you better be careful, you're going to get a cold or something of that nature, that became a part of your belief system. Because that's what forms a tremendous amount of it. We also absorb belief systems without anyone ever saying anything to us. If we are around people as a child that have headaches often, then chances are we're going to develop headaches. Why? Because we think it's a normal part of life, and it seems to be a trait of human nature to want to conform to other people. I seem not to have that trait, and what little I did have, I did my best to get rid of. So you might want to question about what you believe and how it affects you, and if you want to change it. Now this can affect all manner of your life. It can affect you financially, it can affect you socially, it can affect you physically. If you were told that there were members in your family that were alcoholic and you were continually told this, you very well may become an alcoholic. Now, it may be a genetic thing, but the more you hear it, the more true it becomes. So I have seen this in people's lives, and it's just kind of a human characteristic. All right, so what if you have this characteristic and you don't want it and you want to change it? Well, this is what I did. Because I was told as a kid that if I got out and got my feet wet that I would catch cold. Now, I was told this by people that liked me. I did not suffer any kind of abuse or anything of that nature. I was always around very good people, but they did not know that they were programming me to be sick. So I kept a cold every winter, all winter, up until I was probably into my 20s. And then one day, when I received this information, I started adding things up and realized that I can change this. This is true only because I have accepted it as truth. So what I did was I simply sat down outside, got relaxed, closed my eyes, and I repeated a statement something like this: I don't want colds, I don't need them, and I don't take them. Now, I've had a lot of people in the audience jump up and say that was negative programming, use negative terminology. That's true, but that's okay. It was the only way I knew to say it, and it worked. So my health started improving, and I was much healthier at 40 than I was at 20. So another thing was I was around someone who got headaches often. So I just thought it was a part of life. Nobody ever told me I had a choice. And since they didn't tell me I had a choice, I didn't take it. So as a result, I got a lot of headaches, and they were pretty severe, and they lasted a long time. So after getting this information and thinking it over, I decided, well, I can handle that too. So one day on a construction job, because I was a construction foreman at the time, I simply sat down on a cinder block right out on the job site, shut my eyes, just simply to lower my brain frequency. See, anytime we get relaxed, close our eyes, we lower our brain frequency. And that helps me to think at the most powerful state of brain frequency, which it was what I did really. I put myself in the alpha frequency. And I gave myself this suggestion: I don't want colds, I'm not cold. I made myself this suggestion: I don't want headaches, I don't need them, and I don't take them. Get away and don't come back. It has been 73, it's been 40 years now, and I've never had a headache in that 40 years. So the body pretty much does what the brain tells it to. And I've got an old hillbilly way of saying things. You have an old hillbilly way of saying things. Your body is listening while your mouth is talking. I have another way of saying things, that your body is listening while someone else is talking. That is why it is so important to keep positive people in your life and negative people out of it. It's really pretty simple. Now, with that said about our belief system, and this can be applied to most anything that you need to apply it to, let's talk a moment about energy, because energy is literally everything. And as I said earlier, all things are composed of energy, and the intelligent human mind can change it. So the scientists have found that within an atom, which is composed of, and I learned this in 8th grade science class, a nucleus, some charges of electricity called protons and electrons, with a lot of empty space in between. The scientists have found that this space is not empty. It contains energy. This is the way that I get a lot of information. I use a pendulum. Now, what I have is a bullet on a chain. This is my pendulum. Okay, so when I learned that, about the atom, I simply got my pendulum and I said, I would like to talk to my dowsing system here. And does my dowsing system understand energy? And I got a yes, because this is a yes, this is a no. Okay, real simple. Do you understand the energy within the atom? And again, I got a yes. Does this energy have intelligence? Yes, it does. Does this intelligent energy respond to human thought? Yes. Well, what does that tell us? Well, what it told me was that everything that exists, and out here where we are today, these boards on this building, the grass, the trees, the water, and you and me, are all composed of atoms. Well, atoms make cells. This may be oversimplified, but cells make tissue. Tissue makes body parts, and all combined form a human body. This is why I believe that we need to use positive terminology and keep people in our lives that are positive people, because each part of our body has intelligence and emotions. So another thing I wanted to tell you was that if literally everything that exists is composed of atoms, it must of necessity be in everything, this intelligent energy I spoke of in each atom. If it is in everything, it is of necessity everywhere, and if it is everywhere, there is nowhere that it isn't. So if we have any Bible scholars watching this, I believe you would find that that was the definition of what you call God. It is energy that is in all things and everywhere and nowhere that it isn't. Now, once you can really get a mental grip on this and realize that energy is all around us, everywhere, it is in the air that we breathe, the water we drink, and your body is composed of it, and it responds to human thought, that greatly expands your ability for accomplishing things that the rest of the world might call miracles. It's simply the shifting or redirecting of energy. All right? Now, everything that exists in the physical world must of necessity exist in the non-physical world. For example, these boots I have here, this belt, gun belt, holster, all this used to be a cowhide. Probably not the same cow, but it could have been. Somebody had to skin that cow, scrape off the hair, tan the leather. What made the difference in whether that cowhide became boots, a holster, a belt, or a knife holster, or any other thing made from leather? The intent of the person working with the leather. That's very simple. In your home, you may have wooden floors, chairs, tables, picture frames, furniture. They all come from a tree. Somebody had to cut down that tree, take it to the sawmill, turn it into boards. What made the difference in whether those boards became your table, chair, floor, or door, or window frame? The intent of the person working with that wood. The tree provided the energy, human intent directed what it would become. All right. With that in mind, remember, the first rule of success is think of what you want, not what you don't want. Why? Because energy follows thought. So, one of the first ways of changing your belief system is to recognize it. It's kind of hard to change things that you can't recognize. And then reach a relaxed state of mind, which technically is an alpha brain frequency, but don't worry about that. Just let's call it a relaxed state of mind. That makes it easy. And mentally repeat a phrase that contradicts your previous belief system. That is the first step of changing your mind. Let's talk about brainwashing and how it has probably affected you and affected me. There are certain conditions under which the human brain is receptive to suggestion. And receptivity to suggestion is literally brainwashing. And one of the very simple ways that most of us have practiced all of our life, and we never knew it, was simply looking up like this. Now, I don't know why this is, but looking up like this, raising our eyes, looking up, that puts us in an alpha brain frequency. Well, what benefit is that? Well, there is something somewhat magical about the alpha brain frequency. For any information we receive at a low brain frequency, whether it's alpha, theta, or beta, makes a deeper impression upon the brain cells. Whatever makes a deeper impression upon the brain cells becomes a part of our subconscious mind. What becomes a part of our subconscious mind becomes our belief system. So most of kids, all of us as kids, were shorter than adults. So how many of you ever messed up something and you looked up like this at somebody pointing at you saying you should be ashamed of yourself. And you probably were, and you may have been the rest of your life. That is a simple form of brainwashing. Did the person did that to you know they were brainwashing you? No, probably not. But it worked anyway. You do not have to be an expert in hypnotism or anything such thing to brainwash a child. All you have to do is give them a suggestion. Unfortunately, most children receive the wrong suggestions. So, I was fortunate to have been old enough to have all this information before April was born. So I always wondered, what could a kid do if they didn't know they couldn't do it? So I started out to work with her from the night she was born. One of the first suggestions, or the first suggestion I gave her the night she was born was, you can dream of anything you want and all of your dreams will be happy. Well, at 8 years old, I asked her one day, have you ever had a bad dream? And she says, well, yeah, once. I said, tell me about it. Oh no, it was too scary. I said, well, I want to help you, but I can't help you if I don't know what the problem is. So at least give me one word to describe the problem. She says, a mean old ugly witch. And I said, you dreamed about that? Uh-huh. And I said, now look at me. Tell me, what was she wearing? And April said, a long black dress. And I slapped my hands right in front of her eyes. And she jumps. And I said, what else? A sharp pointed hat. And I slapped my hands again. And what did she look like? And a long crooked nose. And I slapped my hands again. What was I doing? I was getting her to focus on a description, which meant she focused her attention on it, and then I distracted the focus by slapping the hands. One or two more instances like this, and I said, okay, now tell a dream. She wasn't afraid anymore. Now, you can use this for children, and I have used it for adults, but don't tell them what you're going to do. What you do is simply get them to focus on their fears, give you a vivid description. See, if you are describing something to me, you're having to use the right side of your brain to get the information to make a picture of it. It's really that simple. And when you do, I slap my hands like that without telling you ahead of time. It scatters your focus and it dissipates the fear. It actually worked on a friend I had who got stuck in a tunnel in Vietnam. And every time he started to think about it, he would get very nervous and sweat would pour off of him. And I said, now just calm down. I'm not going to do anything to hurt you. Just sit there. I want you to tell me the story. And every time he would get to an emotional point, I would distract his attention. This took maybe 3 or 4 minutes. And this was in class. And then I had him tell the whole class the story. He didn't sweat. He didn't get nervous. We have helped a friend overcome the fear of flying like that. Simply imagining going to the airport, clap your hands in front of their face, imagine checking the baggage, pack it again, getting on the plane, slap your hands again. And after the trip all the way across the country, the person thanked me for the best trip they ever had. So you can use this to eliminate an awful lot of fear in both kids and adults. It's just a very simple process. But what I also wanted to say about looking up like this, putting ourselves in the alpha brain frequency. You see, when we are in an alpha frequency, this is my opinion, that we are on the same frequency. We're in higher intelligence, creative force, the Great Spirit, God, or whatever you might wish to call it. We're on the frequency where that exists. Whenever we attune our brain to that frequency, then we are in touch with it. Just like give you an example. If you want to listen to a country music song, you know better than to tune to a rock station. Why? Because it isn't there. Okay, if you want information, you have to tune in where the information exists. And that appears to be the alpha brain frequency, a beat of about 10 beats per second. Okay, and when you look up like this, it puts you on that frequency. See, alpha is not some mysterious realm off in another dimension somewhere that you access only by sitting in a lotus position with the fingers together and chanting. You can do it while driving down the road at 70 miles an hour. And the interesting thing is that brain frequency research has shown that those of us who practice dowsing, by whatever method you might want to use, are simultaneously functioning in all brain frequencies. And this is why I can be talking to someone on the phone that I do not know and start telling them things about themselves. And they wonder how I know. Well, it's not a matter of smarts. It's simply a matter of asking the right question and being tuned in. That's really all it is. Nothing really mysterious about it. So, let me ask you a question. If looking up like this puts one in an alpha brain frequency, being receptive to suggestion, why do you think that the pulpit is higher than the congregation? Well, your local minister may not know, but somebody once upon a time knew and planned it that way. It is simply a way to put people in an altered state, give them suggestions, and have many of them respond. It may not work on everybody every time, but overall, it works. Another condition conducive to brainwashing is fear. You can control people if they have a lot of fear than you can if they don't have fear. Another is a state of shock. If a person is in a car wreck or fell off the roof or anything having a state of shock, they're extremely receptive to a suggestion at that time. So if you should happen upon an accident on the road, someone's laying there with blood running out of them, simply lean over and whisper in their ear and say, tell your body to stop bleeding. Another condition conducive to brainwashing is anesthesia. And when a person is under anesthesia, they're in a low brain frequency, and they are hearing what all is going on in the operating room. So if the people working on them are saying, well, it doesn't look like this one's going to make it, let's just kind of clip them back together, they probably die before the week's out, they probably will. So another condition is a degree of expectancy. That is, to tell a story, build it up to a dramatic punchline, and stop. And every time you watch TV, you get this one laid on you. They build up a drama, and they give you a commercial. It's planned that way by people who know exactly what they're doing, and it works. Now, the more that you understand these techniques, the more immune you will become to them. I'm not going to tell you that you will be totally immune, because you may not be, but at least you will do what I call stack the deck of life in your favor by understanding what you're being subjected to and being able to reject it. My friend Larry and I got to thinking one day about how the mind works and how that we might use all this to our advantage. So we came up with what we believe to be the best self-brainwashing technique, or you might want to call it self-programming technique, that I have ever heard. Now, it has been said that if we can focus on something for 17 uninterrupted seconds, we have a pretty good chance of causing it to manifest into reality. But did you ever try to focus on something for 17 seconds without an interruption of some kind? It's not as easy as you might think for. Now, I'd like to tell a couple of stories that I heard years ago, and I heard them from the American newscaster, Paul Harvey. He had a series of stories called The Rest of the Story. And I listened to him every chance I got because he was quite an interesting fellow. And here's one of the stories he told a long time ago, over 40 years ago probably. And the story as I remember it went something like this. Over in England years ago, when they hanged people for stealing, there was a young fella that was accused of stealing from someone, and he claimed he didn't do it. Nobody believed him. They had a trial and found him guilty. And on the gallows, with the rope around his neck, was asked if he had any last words. And he said, "To show you that I am innocent, there will never be a blade of grass grow on my grave." And they sprung the trap door and hanged him and took him out to the graveyard and buried him and went on back to work. After all, he was just a farmhand. So time went on. Other people died of various causes. They were buried in the same graveyard. Time goes on. Rain falls and the grass grows. All except that one little 3 by 6 foot rectangle where they buried that fella. There was no grass there. So some of the folks said, "Hey, this is the guy that said there'd be no grass growing in his grave because he was innocent." Well, this was quite an embarrassment to the authorities whenever they learned of it. So they think, well, we'll take care of this. So they go out there and sow some grass seed on the grave. Today we would call that a cover-up. Well, it withered and died. So, well, we'll put some sod on the grave. And they did, and it withered and died. So they cut some big, thick blocks of sod and put on the grave, and it withered and died. Years later, according to the story, the graveyard was landscaped, grass seed was sown, straw was put down, it was watered, and the grass grew, except that little 3 by 6 foot rectangle where that fellow was buried. And that story I heard was probably 150 years after this happened. So the question is, how could a farmhand who might not even been able to write his name stop grass from growing 100 years or more? That defies what we think we know as logic. So how did he do it? Let's tell another story. And this came from the same fella, Paul Harvey, about hanging of Blackbeard the pirate. And as I understand it, and best I recall, Blackbeard had a chair in which he wouldn't let anyone else sit. It was his personal chair. And on the gallows with the rope around his neck, his last words were, "Whoever sits in my chair will die," something like within 24 hours or before sundown or some short period of time. Well, they hanged him, and folks were talking about that, and there were a number of people who were not superstitious. Well, there's no way they're going to believe that pirate can do anything now. We've already buried him. So they sat in the chair. At this time I heard the story, there were 18 people who did not believe in this nonsense, and they were going to prove Blackbeard wrong. They are in another dimension believing something else now. All of them died very shortly. How did he do it? I not only found out how they did it, I found out how to make money with it. You want to know? Okay. Follow directions. Take you a simple sheet of notebook paper. Write your goal in positive terminology with as few words as possible. The brain does not like long-winded, drawn-out discussions for programming. Keep it simple, okay? Make it positive, and make it now. It's not "I want," "I'm going to get," or "I wish I had." It's "I have" or "I am," now, okay? And then take that piece of paper, take you some tape, and tape it way up on the wall, right near the ceiling. Stand back away from it, or sit down, as you choose. Look up at it. Fill your lungs with air. Hold your breath. And read, and read, and reread, and reread again, as long as you can hold your breath. And then, of course, you'll breathe, okay? What have you done? First off, you've set a goal. That is, you have directed your intention. Intent is a very important word. And you have put the energy into it to write it down. You have looked up at it, putting yourself in the alpha brain frequency, where there is more power to your thoughts than there were in the beta frequency. You have filled your lungs with air, held your breath, which excites the survival mechanisms of the body. That was another condition I left out on brainwashing. See, when the survival mechanisms of the body are excited. Now, I said fear, but it could also be the sight of blood, especially yours. Or the stopping of breathing would do it, okay? So you have excited the survival mechanisms of your body, making your brain wide open to suggestions. Unfortunately now, this could be good or bad suggestions. That's why I had you write it down and make it positive. And then while you are in this state of extreme brain receptivity, you are reading what you have written. And as long as you're reading it over and over and over again, you're not thinking about, when do I eat? What am I going to do next? What time do I go to work tomorrow? You're not thinking about that stuff. You are reading what's right in front of you, and you can hold your breath for longer than 17 seconds. By the time that you have followed these simple directions, you have given yourself a suggestion at the most powerful state of mind, and you have been in total control of the entire situation. You do not have to depend upon anyone else to do it for you. You're the one that did it. So that, in my opinion, is about the best brainwashing technique that I've ever heard of. What I did, I just combined a whole lot of them together. Now, does it work? Well, I think so. Because at the time I did this, and that would have been back in, I think, 2004, if I remember correctly, I might talk to a couple hundred people a year at best. Within 30 days of the time I programmed myself, and this is how I program myself, and you feel free to use this. I share it with all the people in my classes. What statement did I write down and read to myself? It goes like this. I understand my life's purposes. I have knowledge and ability to fulfill them. I thought that was about the most important thing I could do, so that's what I used. Within less than a month of the time I did this, I received a call from Coast to Coast AM radio asking if I would be on their show. And George Noory, the talk show host that night, said we have somewhere between 5 and 10 million listeners. I asked to understand my life's purposes and have knowledge and ability to fulfill them. So yeah, I think it worked. I would like to share a story with you about working with kids. I lived so far back in the woods here that we literally had to import playmates for April when she was a kid. She didn't go to public school until she was about 14. So there were a couple of families with some very well-behaved children and asked if I would work with their kids and train theirs the way that I had trained mine. And I wasn't sure I could do it, but I wanted to try. So they would bring them to my house, and we would go out in the woods and we would practice mind development, and we would practice survival and building fires and cooking on the fire and all kind of things, and the kids had a really good time. And I always encouraged these kids. I did not have a discipline problem with them whatsoever. They were just really good to work with. But I let them do things that they might not get to do at home or at school. And I let them be free. I had a motto when I was 10 years old, and it went like this: there is no substitute for freedom. So I did my best to let these kids do whatever they wanted to do as long as it wasn't dangerous. And it went over well. So one day I wanted to give them a lot of self-confidence. So I picked a couple of trees. One was a tulip poplar, which is a soft wood, very light in color, almost white. The other was an oak tree. Now, the poplar tree has very soft wood. The oak tree has very hard wood. But I didn't tell the kids this. I just told them that there are two trees, and you're really sharp kids. I bet you could pretend to walk into those trees and tell me which one has the hardest wood. Now that doesn't sound reasonable to most folks, just to look at a tree and tell how hard the wood is. But let's see what happened. I said, I want you to close your eyes and pretend that you walk over to the tree with the lighter colored bark and the smoother bark, and reach out with your hand as though you were touching it. And what do you think it would feel like? Now, I want you to walk through the bark into the tree and see what color wood is there. Now, knock on the wood, make a fist, knock on it like that, and see how hard it is. See what it sounds like. See what it feels like. What was I getting them to do? To employ their five senses. And I said, okay, come on back out now. Walk over to this other tree in your imagination. Reach out and touch that tree. Feel the bark. See how it feels different than the first tree? Now walk through the bark. Walk into the tree. See what color the wood is. Make a fist. Knock on the wood. See how hard it is. See what it sounds like. Come on back out. Close your eyes. Which tree had the hardest wood? Every kid there points at the oak tree. I said, you're right. I knew you could do it. Well, how much empowerment do you think that did those kids to realize that they could mentally walk into two trees and tell the difference in the wood? Quite a bit. So about a year goes by, and April comes in one day from school and says, Daddy, there's a little boy at school that has cancer, and he was put in intensive care today, and the teacher says he will probably die tomorrow or the next day. Will you help him? And I said, well, you've been hanging around me for 17 years now. You know how we do this stuff. You do it, and I'll check you out later and see how you do. So 2 or 3 hours later, I said, April, let's check on this kid, see what's going on. I couldn't find anything. Now, see, folks, with dowsing, we have the ability to go back in time and get information as well as in the present. I said, so let's go back to 9 a.m. this morning. The spirit of death was on him. The body had pretty much shut down. I couldn't even get an energy read. There was just hardly, well, there was no energy there. He was just about gone. But you know something? He came back to school before the week was out. Nobody ever knew what happened. And they never will unless they happen to be watching this video. And then a couple of weeks later, or sometime later, she comes in. Daddy, there's a little girl in school that had bone cancer. And I didn't tell you about her. I just thought I would see what I could do for her. She came to school today and has had all the tests, and there's no bone cancer. Must have been a misdiagnosis. I said, you did pretty good, kids. You've been listening. Moral to the story is kids will live up to or down to our expectations. So I always set goals for them and always encourage them. The brain thinks in pictures better than it thinks in words. So I want to sum something up for you, as I do most everything. If you can reach a relaxed state of mind and create mental pictures, you can perform miracles. It's really about that simple. But reaching the most powerful state of mind is very important, because at a relaxed state of mind, or scientifically speaking, the alpha brain frequency, you have a lot more brain power. So that's where you want to do your thinking, and that's where you want to do your self-improvement programming or self-brainwashing, whatever you might want to call it. So it's very important to focus on what you want. But I realize the human mind plays tricks on us and doesn't always do what we want it to do. And sometimes you catch yourself thinking of something and maybe even dwelling on it, and all at once you realize, wait a minute, I'm feeding energy to the wrong thing here. I don't want to do this. How did I get into this mess? Well, there's a technique that has worked pretty good for me, and I only share it in classes when I think about it, and today I happen to think about it. Whenever you think of anything, you naturally form a mental picture of it. What I do, if some memory comes up or just a thought that is not beneficial, I simply pretend I've got a big red paintbrush in my hand, and I just reach out and I draw a big red X through it. And then I force myself to think of something opposite that would cancel it out, or think of something positive. What I did, I trained my brain, at least to a fairly decent degree, to stop thinking about stuff like that. Because we can literally train our brain what to think about. It takes a bit of discipline, and that's one of the techniques of doing it. Another is just simply reach a relaxed state of mind, like maybe when you go to sleep at night, or as soon as you wake up in the morning, where you repeat positive affirmations or suggestions or statements, whatever you might want to say. One is, I maintain a totally healthy body and mind. And whatever you want in your life, you give thanks for it rather than ask for it. Because if you continually ask for something, you're saying that you don't have it. But if you give thanks for it, you're affirming that you do have it. So I would like to share with you the way I do my programming night and morning. I simply give thanks for whatever I want in my life, such as the spirit of life, because I believe that everything has a spirit. So I give thanks for the spirit of life, the spirit of love, the spirit of gratitude, the spirit of kindness, spirit of forgiveness, spirit of happiness, and the spirit of freedom. So what I noticed was, in so doing, my life improved. So bottom line, whatever you want in your life, give thanks for it while you are relaxed. Another thing, if you wake up in the morning wondering, okay, what all kind of problems am I going to have to deal with today, you are really inviting those problems in. So think about, when you wake up, what is the very best thing that can happen to you today? Now, why do I suggest this? Simply because of the third principle I gave you earlier. Energy follows thought. If you think you are sick, frustrated, fearful, and defeated, the odds are pretty good that you are sick, frustrated, fearful, and defeated. So if you don't want to be that way, don't think that way. Right here are just some suggestions that I pass out in class. I'm just kind of giving them to you at random. One is, I give thanks for being at the right place at the right time. Now, this is good for business. You want to make a business call on a client whenever they're most receptive. And making a business call right after they've had an argument with somebody is not a real good thing to do. So by you giving yourself the suggestion daily that you're always at the right place at the right time, and do and say the right thing at the right time, you're going to have better opportunities. Another thing, any accident you ever saw on the road would not likely have happened if one driver had been about 2 seconds faster or slower than the other. So being at the right time on the highway can literally be a matter of life and death. So I cannot overemphasize the timing. And what is interesting, I have made 3-day trips and get to where I'm going within 15 minutes of the time I set a goal to be there. You can't MapQuest something that close, but you can program it. And I have actually showed up within 1 minute of when I was supposed to be there. But again, it's not a matter of intelligence, it is a matter of planting a suggestion within your mind. And you have far more ability to control your life than anyone ever told you you did. So today is a good day to start. Okay, some of you may have little kids, grandkids. So let me share a story or so with you here of how to positively affect them. Now, on real small children, when you're putting them to bed at night and telling them a story, you will see that their eyelids start to flutter. This is the optimum time to give them a suggestion. So let me just give you a story of what I did. When April was about 3, she got a kidney infection because she didn't drink enough water. And I said, well, April, you got to drink some more water. I'm not thirsty. Well, drink it anyway, but I'm not thirsty. So I didn't argue with her. I was just putting her to bed that night and telling her a story, and when I saw the eyelids start to flutter, I leaned over and whispered, April is thirsty. April wants water. April wants juice. Thirsty, thirsty. Yum, yum, yum. Slurp, slurp, slurp. Thirsty, thirsty. Next day, the kid starts drinking water. Never had any more problems. What did I do? I simply gave her the suggestion she was thirsty at a relaxed state of mind. Same way whenever she was a little kid about dreaming, and the suggestion was every night, you can dream of anything you want and you will always have happy dreams. And to my knowledge, there was only one exception to that, and we used that and turned it around into a very positive situation. So as far as helping kids learn, I've heard it said that if we use movement and color, that we can learn 8 times faster. So, in teaching her to read at about 5 years old, she had a little trouble getting the words together. Words like here, where, there, all look pretty much alike except the first letter. So I got her to relax. And I had already taught her how to, in her imagination, create a playground, because I really encouraged imagination. So I said, okay, today we're going to have our class in your imaginary playground. So close your eyes and pretend you are there. That's really all it took. And I said, I will count to 3. At the count of 3, there will be a little neat one-room schoolhouse up here, and your unicorn will be your teacher. So I counted 1, 2, 3. Do you see it? Fine. I want you to go over there and go in the door, and there is a green chalkboard with lots of pretty colored chalk and a neat little desk for you. Well, she wanted to pick flowers. I said, okay, so I've got a little 5-year-old kid sitting on the couch beside of me, reaching out, pretending she's picking flowers. She has to get a vase to put them in. She puts them in the vase, and she goes in and pretends to put them on the desk. Encourage hand movement, because hand movement, our hands are exclamation points for our thoughts. So in doing healing work at a distance or over the phone, whatever, always use your hands. You're going to get better results. So then I had her unicorn appear in front of the chalkboard, and I said, what color chalk do you want to use? Pink. Okay, fine. Have your unicorn pick up a piece of pink chalk and write on the board, H-E-R-E. That spells here. What color do you want to use now? Blue. Fine. Have your unicorn pick up a piece of blue chalk and write H-E-R-E, but put a T in front of it. That spells there. Now what color do you want to use? Purple. Fine. Have your unicorn pick up a piece of purple chalk. Write on the board, H-E-R-E, but put a W in front of it. That spells where. And we went through about a dozen or so words. And then I said, open your eyes, here's your book, read to me, and she knew all the words. So whatever you want a child to learn, have them get relaxed, close their eyes, imagine themselves in a pleasant place, help them create one. And you can do that with my CD called Medicine Place, or one, any type of a meditative state or whatever, simply a relaxed state of mind, something pleasant. That's really simple. And then talk them through, have them visualize whatever they want being written out. Now you can imagine a blue sky and write it in clouds in the sky. It really doesn't matter. What matters is that you focus their imagination and visualization on this. What they're doing is creating a mental picture which is much easier to recall whenever they need to recall the information. You can also give them the suggestion that while they're doing this, that you will recall this information anytime in the future that you want to do so. And they will. It is amazing how the brain works. And many times the brain needs a suggestion to know what to do, so giving the suggestion at a relaxed state of mind is certainly a good way to do that. Now with older kids, let's say they're in high school, you simply can get them relaxed and you can read to them slowly and have them visualize it being maybe typed out on their computer screen or something. But make a mental picture of what you want to remember. That works really, really good.
There's many a man who would change the whole land if he could just find the right way. There's many a girl who's in search of life's pearls, struggles the whole livelong day. But the water is flowing, the wind is a-blowing, the earth she is gentle and kind. The time isn't near and there's no need for fear, the answer is inside your mind. Change it, rearrange it, the future is yours, can't you see? The gifts that are offered are just part of your reality. Just broaden your distant horizons and we'll all be free. Just do what you do and you'll get what you get. That's one of life's lessons I've learned. If you keep courting pain and you play with the fire, that's one easy way to get burned. But the water is flowing, the wind is a-blowing. We can change this old world for the good. We can stop all the crying, the suffering and dying, if we all just do as we should. Change it, rearrange it, the future is yours, can't you see? The gifts that are offered are just part of your reality. Just broaden your distant horizons and we'll all be free. Just broaden your distant horizons and we'll all be free.